I know that most of you know and memorized at some point in your life growing up, kind of the vocal or key passage that came out of our scripture reading for today, where Joshua tells his people, choose for yourself this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Right? Like that's when we learn, it's when we memorize as a child, and most of us have it printed somewhere on a placard or something hanging around our house, because it's kind of a rallying cry for us. That whatever happens, whatever the other people may think, me and my house, my family, we're going to serve the Lord. It's a phenomenal passage that kind of is the hallmark or the top point of Joshua's farewell speech. And I want to put that in context for you, all right? As providing a foundation of the conversation that we're about to have. And context that for you, the passage that we read in Joshua chapter 24. What we've seen is that the conquest is mostly over, all right? Joshua has done his job. He's led the people in order to take the land. And then, except for some mobbing up issues, they're pretty much done. And now he's an old man. He's ready to retire and move on and pass it off to the next generation because his job is complete. And what we were to do, if you were to read this, maybe go back and read it this afternoon and look at everything that he says in chapter 24, verses 1 through 13, he's reminding them what God has done. All right? And that's an important context to think about when he says, choose for yourself whom you're going to serve, and I'm going to serve Yahweh. To think about, he's just reminded them of everything else that God had already done for them. So 13 verses he walks through and says, God has done this and this and this and this. And then in verse 14, he says, now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped before the Euphrates and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day whom you will serve. And he says, my family is going to serve the Lord. So out of a context of knowing all the things that God has done for his people in this great conquest that they're now on the backside of, he says, we've got to turn our attention. And I'm encouraging you as your leader to turn your attention to focus only on the Lord, only on Yahweh, and not be distracted by the other gods that exist in our area. Well, in verses 16 through 24, which we read, the people said, we will. Yeah, we'll do that. Matter of fact, like at the end of verse 18, they say, we too will serve Yahweh because he is our God. And he says, are you sure? And he talks about how much it's going to cost them. And in verse 21, they say, no, we're sure. We will serve Yahweh. So you see this conversation that Joshua, the leader of the Israelites, is having with his people. God has done wonderful things. God has been faithful to us. He has fulfilled his promise. He's given us this promised land just like he said. Now you need to be faithful to God. And they say we will. And if you fast forward to the end in verse 31, the author tells us that they did. Verse 31 tells us that Israel served Yahweh throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who had outlived him, meaning that this generation, this group that's gone through the conquest, they stayed faithful. They did what Joshua encouraged them to do. And I want you to see this as the climax to the greatest moment and the greatest time frame in Israel's history. They've come across the river. They've taken the land that God has given them. They've seen God be faithful. They have been faithful to him. And they ended in faithfulness to God. Right? This is good. This is mountaintop experience. This is as good as it gets. And we want to be able to acknowledge that that's awesome. And that's how Joshua's story ends. God has been faithful. And the people have been faithful. But turn the page. All right, get your Bibles out and turn. Most of you is probably just one page. For me it is. And go to Judges chapter 2. And in Judges chapter 2, we hear like a synopsis of what we've just read, beginning in verse 6. It says, after Joshua had dismissed the Israelites, they went to take possession of the land, each to their own inheritance. The people served Yahweh throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him, who had seen all the great things that Yahweh had done for Israel. It's actually a quote. It's an exact quote from Joshua 24, verse 31. So they're copying that as a summary. But look at what happens in verse 10. After that whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors, as in they had died, they had passed on, and the new generation steps up. So after that whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors, another generation grew up who knew neither Yahweh nor what he had done for Israel. Holy cow. Joshua and his peers know the Lord, serve the Lord, are faithful with the Lord. But when they pass away and their children, the next generation, step into leadership, they don't know God. And it continues in verse 11 and then into verse 12, where it says that then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of Yahweh, and they served the Baals. They forsook Yahweh, the God of their ancestors, who had brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshipped various gods of the people around them, and they aroused Yahweh's anger because they forsook him and served Baal and the Ashtoreths. And this is the beginning of what we know as the tumultuous time of the Judges. And I want you to see that transition. Joshua and his family, right? His generation, all of his peer group, those who had fought this great fight, were faithful to God. They stayed with God. They kept the promises that they had made to God. They did not chase the other idols. But when they died, the generation that followed them, their children and their grandchildren, didn't know Yahweh and didn't follow Yahweh. And it makes us, we have to ask the simple question. What happened? What happened? When Joshua, this great leader of the people, in this great conquest of the people, where God has shown himself to be unbelievable, completely powerful, all things fall under him, and his people have conquered this land surely by simple faithfulness and obedience to him, and he has shown himself. This generation knew that, and they followed it, but they didn't pass that faith down to their kids. They didn't take the relationship that they had with Yahweh, the faith that they had in Yahweh, and the experience that they had seen Yahweh do on their behalf, and share that with the generation that came behind them. They didn't pass the faith on. And this is an important thing for us to note, all right? Because our faith, going as far back as that, and even as far back to Abraham, our faith, even in its Old Testament form, has always been one of generational continuity. Meaning that faith in Yahweh, that fellowship or discipleship of Jesus Christ as Lord, doesn't come naturally. It's not a decision that people make automatically or even by accident. It has to be intentionally passed to someone else. Meaning that those of us in a generation have to be intentional about passing our faith on to the next generation, because if we don't, they're not going to pick it up on their own. They're not going to meet Jesus on their own. They're not going to decide to follow Jesus on their own. Our generation has the responsibility of passing the faith on to the next generation. And here's an observation that I've made. Now, I've only been here about 4 months. I'm still new to this church and I'm new to what we're doing, but I think my observation is spot on. We are in danger of making the same mistake that Joshua did. Okay? Just look around. We are in danger of making the exact same mistake that Joshua and his generation made. Of a generation that is faithful to God, that has seen God do wonderful things, and that lives in obedience to God, but is not passing that faith to the generation that comes behind us. And if we don't do that, then the generation that comes behind us is going to do the same thing that the generation did that came behind Joshua. They're not going to know God, and then they're not going to follow God, which means the church of God is not going to thrive. It won't do it. It won't exist. So I want you to think about what we see here in this passage. My observation is that we're in danger of making the same mistake. And here's the reason I say that. All right? Not just from looking, not just from observation, but also from some statistical things that back it up. Here's what I've seen. I've done some research about what healthy churches look like. Particularly looking at what percentage of participation or attendance is in a healthy church for children and youth. So the total number of people that participate, say, in Sunday school, what percentage of that group of people should be children or teenagers? The research that I've looked is that for a healthy church, the attendance of children averages about 21%. That 21% of people who attend, say, Sunday school, if that's the metric we're using, 21% of our total attendance should be children. Now, on our best Sunday since I've been here, since January, the best Sunday that we've had, our children's attendance was 12%. That's 26 out of 203 people, the absolute best day we've had so far this year. And we exist in the bottom 10% of churches in the country of children engagement and discipleship and worship. And I need you to let that stat sink in, because that gives statistical and numerical value to what you and I already kind of see around us. And we already know, but may be afraid to talk about, is that we are not investing our faith into the next generation. And we have to. We absolutely must. And to do that, we have to give ourselves, we have to give our church the tools in order to do that. So based on that observation and based on the calling that God has given on me to come here, I want to tell you what my recommendation is. And that's what today is, for me to recommend something to you. My recommendation is that we reallocate our ministry structures and our resources to emphasize our ministries to youth and to children and to their parents, for the purpose of making them feel welcomed in our church, welcomed in our facility, welcomed in our family, so that we can engage them with the gospel. That we restructure what it is we do, and we focus our work, we focus our resources, we focus all of our energy on children and youth and their parents, those young adult families, or what we would see from Joshua, the next generation that is coming. And that we invest our time and effort in passing the faith on to them. Let me tell you how I recommend we do that. Let me kind of give you a vision of what I think we should be doing in order to achieve that goal. The first thing we ought to be doing is focusing with parents. And the way that we do that, the way that we engage with parents, is that we create a welcome center. We put signage in our buildings, some simple things, some very basic things that let people know that they are welcomed here. I want you to see the little picture that's on the screen, just kind of an image of what I think a welcome center looks like. That's the door I think we use. It's actually right over here. That becomes our primary entrance. It's the door right next to our visitors' parking space. It's the door right next to our parking spaces that are dedicated for parents or for expecting parents. It's also the door that's closest to our two primary parking lots on the side and out in front. That becomes the place where we say, this is where we want you to come. So when visitors come, when new families come, when anyone comes, they would know that this is the place where you can come to, and it creates an obvious entrance point. An obvious place with outside signage and with inside signage that points us, and this is where you can come. And at that place, we would create like a welcome center, put a little coffee bar there even, and that becomes the place where visitors can be welcomed, where first contact can be made, where information can be shared. It creates a contact point, a place where our welcoming spirit, and I'm going to be honest, I'm going to tell you, this church has the kindest, most sweetest, most welcoming spirit of any church I've ever been a part of. And I'm a preacher's kid, all right? I've been doing this my entire life. Our spirit is good. The hard part we've already got, but sometimes our building doesn't show it. And we can make a simple change, create a little welcome spot, create a place where people can come, grab a cup of coffee, learn about a trip, sign up for something, find out where their Sunday school classes are. This is the place where we meet people for the first time. And let me tell you how important that is, all right? Just from a personal example. When I moved here, on January the 7th, we started, and that first Sunday, we came, of course, I came early, was in the office and getting ready for the day. And then my family showed up, my wife and my two kids, and they walked in the side door right over here, and didn't know where to go. And there wasn't anyone there to tell them where to go. And there wasn't any signage in the building to say, oh, this is where the kids go, or this is where the welcome center is. None of that existed. So even the pastor's family shows up as a new family. We knew they were coming and had no one there to greet them, to contact them, and to point them in the right direction. We can do better than that. That's an easy fix. So I think we do that. I think we create a welcome center that makes that contact point. I think we create new Sunday school classes. We desperately need a young adult Sunday school class. And what I recommend is that we create a young adult Sunday school class that meets downstairs, and that we move or relocate our medium adult class, what we call the Joy class that right now meets in the choir suite, and we move them downstairs too. And that we need to create space for young people, for young parents, for young families. give them a space to belong to. Because here's the key. The basics behind making people welcome, the very concept behind Christian hospitality, is that you make space for people in your life. Now, usually that means like making time for them, giving a chair at your table, making a time to be able to listen and to care about them. And for us here, it's physically, we have to make a space. Did you know that the youngest class that we have, the youngest age group Sunday school class we have, is the Joy class that meets in the varsity? And it has retirees in it. Like 20-year-olds don't want to come to that class. That's not the place where a 25-year-old mother and father of a child want to touch base and connect. It's just not. So when we try to reach young families, when we do like the Easter egg hunt, we touch base with 75 families at that event. We have their names, we know where they live, we've made contacts with them, we invite them to church, and we physically do not have anywhere for them to go. We can fix that. So I think we create a young adult Sunday school class, and we move it downstairs to make space for them and conveniently put them closest to the parking lot, to the welcome center, and to our children's spaces. So that's how we engage with parents. That's how we make room, make space for families in our church. Second thing I want to think about is youth. How do we emphasize teenagers? How do we emphasize our youth ministry? And I think we do that by enlarging the youth discipleship space that exists upstairs. I want you to see the picture that's behind us, all right? This is a mock-up drawing of our second floor after it's been renovated. I've got my fun little pen. Y'all check this out. Can you see this right here? It says youth. Usually there's a hallway that exists right here. That's how our building is built. It's got a little, complete circle hallway that goes around the bathrooms and what is Cliff's office and the kitchen space. The idea is to tear down these non-load-bearing walls and enlarge our youth space by about 6 to 8 feet in size of the hallway and take in what was the youth Sunday school class to make a large, open venue space for teenagers. It allows us to spread out and create some place for them to engage, to fellowship. It allows us to create a dedicated worship and discipleship space up there that's just for them. It creates a spot where teenagers feel welcome, the kind of place that they want to go and tell their friends, hey, y'all need to come see this. Y'all need to come be a part of what God is doing here. You want to know how to build a youth ministry? That's how you do it. You get students excited about coming and then excited about what it is that we're talking about, the gospel, and they tell their friends. And we don't have to do it. We don't have to go tell their friends about it. They'll do it for us. That's how a student ministry grows. That's how a movement grows. That's how the church started, is friends telling friends. Let me tell you about this Jesus. Well, this is how we can do that for teenagers. Creating this new open space will greatly increase our energy and our attractiveness on Wednesday nights. It will make a space where teenagers feel welcomed here. It gives us the opportunity to intentionally engage them with the gospel. And as a secondary thing, just as a bonus, it provides our church with a secondary venue, all right? Because what you see is the big room. It'll be subdivided for Sunday school space. It can be, but it'll also be a wide open space. It'll seat about 120 people if we put them in rows like this. It'll seat about 60 people if we put them around tables. It means that we have a conference space. Because right now, if you have a meeting here, it either happens in here or it happens in the parlor. And here seats about 500, the parlor seats about 6, right? We don't have anything in between. It would create us a second venue. So for a marriage conference or some kind of grief ministry class or whatever it is that we need, we would have a space for those kind of things to exist. So our upstairs would become have a dedicated youth space and would give room for them to grow, for our ministry to grow, and also give us another place where we can do ministry and do events. That's how we invest in our students. That's how we grow a youth ministry. That's how we get to engage teenagers with the gospel, as we make space for them in our building and in our church family life. Let's think about children. I think 3 things that we ought to do in order to grow our children's ministries. One is update our preschool department with new paint and decor. That's a picture from our preschool room. I took it this morning. I just walked in there and snapped a picture. Look, it's clean, it's well organized, it's also extremely dated. Everything in that room is dated. The walls are dated, the window treatments are dated, the toys are dated. It's actually the only part of our building that hasn't been updated or hasn't been renovated in the last, I don't know how many years. But you can look at it and tell It's just been there a while. It's been like this for a while. And we need to update that because a modern, welcoming environment is what projects care for children. Think about this. If you were to take your kids somewhere, or you take your grandkids somewhere, you're taking them to a church, or to a daycare, or to an event, or to a party, when you walk up with your kid holding your hand, and you're scanning the place, you're scanning the venue, what are you looking for? You're looking to see, does it screen children? Does it make my child welcome and want to be here? And does it look safe and inviting, a place that I can trust my child? We have to create that kind of space. We have to create a space that just screams at kids, you want to be in this room, and that screams at their parents, you can trust us with your kid in this room because we've made it safe, we've made it clean, it looks modern and up to date. It's everything you would want for your kids because we want your kid to be one of our kids. We've made space for it. It makes a space that children want to be in, and that's attractive to families. It makes it a lot easier for a family who's thinking about coming to church, who may be interested in hearing the gospel, and they show up and they realize, oh, this place loves my child. This place has a warm, inviting, and safe, and welcoming place for my child. Yeah, maybe I'll stay and listen to what they have to say. So I think we update our preschool department. I also think we create a new children's Sunday school department, and then we make that department downstairs. You see that picture? That's right outside the elevator. You see we kind of put welcome signs in that hallway that goes down, that hallway that goes to the length of the buildings where most of our men's classes meet right now. I recommend that becomes our new dedicated children's space. That entire hallway becomes about children's ministry. We move our Sunday school space there, we move our RAs and GA spaces there, that all children things would happen in those places. And what that does for us is it provides a dedicated themed space for children. We can theme it, we can paint it, we can make it colorful and exciting, make it a modern and welcoming environment so that children feel welcome there and their parents feel comfortable bringing their children there. It gives us a simple, close-knit space, and it will improve our Wednesday nights. It'll improve the energy of our Wednesday nights. It will greatly improve the logistics of our Wednesday nights. Right now we have children running all over the building because our spaces are spread out all over the building. We can fix that by bringing it all to one spot. We can also fix that for Sunday mornings because right now we have parents on one side of the building or a parent space on the other side of the building, and then preschool on one side of the building, and then children upstairs on the other side of the building. So when a family comes and they need to walk their kids to their Sunday school class, it's a 10-minute ordeal with 2 trips up and down a set of stairs. We can fix that. We can consolidate all of that into one welcoming, modern space. It gives us the benefit of creating a space that they feel welcomed in. It projects to the community, hey, we love kids, we want you here, we've made a space for you. And it will greatly improve our safety and our convenience by putting all of our children in the same space. It moves all our kids to the same spot. You can see on the drawing that's here, this is a copy of our blueprint with some changes. And you can see that we would put children up and down this hallway, and we would put our young adults in the building room right behind it. This is where the Welcome Center is, and our preschool is right there, and it's all together. It's about 60 square feet, for like 60 linear feet from one side to the other, and all of our kids are contained in one spot. It's convenient for families. It improves our ability to provide safety and provide a safe environment, and it projects to our community, hey, we love kids. We want these children here, and we've made a space for them. So I think we update our preschool department. I think we create this new Sunday school department downstairs, and then I think we build a new playground outside. Outside the end of that hall, you see it points to playground. I think we build a playground right outside of that door on that side of the building, facing downtown Pelahatchie, so that all of our community sees a new playground out there and says, this church must love kids. Because if you put a playground outside, guess what it does? It's like a billboard. It's like a sign you put on the outside of your building saying, hey, kids are welcome here, except we've done it in something that kids can actually interact with, that parents can come and interact with. It's a billboard to tell our community, we love you, and we love your children, and we have made space for you here. It provides energy and attraction. Children will come by here and they're going to say, ooh, look at that playground. Mommy, can we go there? I want to play on that. Can we go there? I want to be at this place. So mommy's looking at the kid who now wants to go to church. They're looking at the church who's built a big playground saying, well, they must love kids. Sure, let's give it a try. And now we get a chance to engage them with the gospel. We get a chance to present Jesus to them. That playground is a billboard. It attracts families to our churches. Just think about this. Think about every church you've ever known. Every church you've ever known that's thriving in children's ministry. That has young families coming out of their ears and kids running all over the place. And try to think about what they have sitting right outside their door. Somewhere in an obvious, prominent space on their property is going to be a play space for kids. That tells that community, we want your kids here. And that playground does that for us. It also creates a collection point for kids on Wednesday nights. It'll have a fence around it. It creates a safe environment where we can collect kids and begin our things. And if you come on Wednesday nights, which you should be doing, let me paint a picture for what's happening. Is we have kids, some of them are right out here by the door, some of them are down here in the parking lot, some of them are in the street, some of them are across the street in the grassy areas, soccer fields. Why is that? Because we don't have anywhere else for them to go. We don't have a collection spot that says, hey kids, you come here. You come here and this is where we'll hang out, this is where we'll play until whatever it is that's about to start starts. Then that playground gives us that ability to bring kids into a safe, fenced-in, controlled environment where we can love them and protect them and then move them through whatever event or processes that we're doing that night. And here's the kicker. A playground gives children a play space where they can practice their Christian faith. And I want you to think about this. For an adult, I teach you something. You learn something. God connects and you says, look, you need to behave this way. You need to act this way. You need to live out this Christian ethic in your life. Where do you practice that? At work. Wherever it is that you spend your day. Where do kids practice their Christian ethics? It's on a playground. Why do you think schools all have playgrounds? Why do you think every school has a sporting event? All right? Sports is not about reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's bigger than that, but it's still part of the educational process because it's through play that children get to practice what they're learning. It's through play, it's on the playground that a child learns what it means to turn the other cheek. That a child learns what it means to share. That a child learns what it means to be hospitable and to make space for someone else who wants to go on the slide with them. The playground is where they practice their Christian ethics and learn to behave like a Christian. So the playground serves as a billboard for us. It serves as a collection and safe place for us. It serves as a theological training ground for our children. We need a space like that. I want you to think that these are steps that we can take to make young families welcome here. That then gives us the opportunity to intentionally engage them with the gospel. Now I know what you're thinking. The first question is, what's that going to cost, preacher? Well, let me tell you, it requires basically two sacrifices on behalf of the church. The first one is from our men's department. Because our men right now exist in the hallway where I want to move our children, and I need our men's classes to move upstairs to create a dedicated men's space that exists right here in this corner. 1, 2, 3 men's classes. That we move our men's department upstairs in order to make way, to make space for children downstairs. And what that does is if our men are willing to do that, it allows our senior adult women to stay downstairs. All of our senior adult classes can meet on this hallway, and here's what's going to happen. It creates a beautiful moment that when you have a children's hallway running one way and a senior adult or say grandmother's hallway running into it, what's going to happen at that intersection? What's going to happen where those two hallways meet? The grandmothers of our church are going to get to interact with the mothers of our church and the children, the grandchildren of our church. And right there in that moment, we've created a place for family to happen, for generational discipleship to happen. for grandmothers to be able to love and experience the joy of children, to invest in a child, to pinch them on the cheek, and do all of that relationship that needs to happen and doesn't happen right now because our kids are tucked away in a corner upstairs. It puts them all in the same area. And it's going to be beautiful moments for our wildest apart generations to be able to connect in a beautiful and real way. So the first sacrifice is that. I need the men to be willing to move their space, to create a new place for them upstairs, to make room for children downstairs. And the second one is finances. Right now, this budget for everything I've kind of shown you is $135,000. And I know that's a lot of money. It is a lot of money. It's a ton of money. It kind of breaks down to about $5,000 to do our welcome area, our preschool department, and we have budget for that. I think we can take that straight out of our budget, out of our building fund, and just do it. And it includes about $20,000 of what it's going to cost to do the youth space upstairs. That's with us being able to do a lot of the work ourselves, the materials, the floorings, things that have to change. $20,000 is more than enough to cover that effort. It includes $110,000 for the new playground. That includes the equipment, that includes the poured-in rubberized floor, everything it needs, and the fence around it, everything we need in order to make it a safe, functioning playground space for our kids. And I've spent about 2 months now working with a playground specialist, trying to design a playground that works for us, that works in the space. And we started at about $150,000. We keep trimming it back and trying to fit it into a smaller budget. And we're still working on that, but the thing that I've shown you right now is $110,000. So $135,000 altogether, we can do all of that. And I need you to think about it, because I know it's a big number, and most of you are going to be like, oh, that's a lot of money. But I need you to see this from a spiritual point of view. That this effort, these sacrifices, and that money are our core principles in action. It's us deciding that everyone is welcome here, which means we have to make space for everyone to be welcome here. It's us pursuing excellence in everything, because if we're going to do it, it needs to be done excellently. It deserves to be done well as an offering to the Lord and as a presentation to a lost community. And it's all in an effort for us to be able to intentional gospel engagement, to have an opportunity to connect with the next generation that we're missing and engage them with the gospel. Now here's what I want you to do. I want to invite you to respond to this, presentation. I want to tell you how, a couple of ways you can do it. One, as a church member, as a part of this family, I want you to think about it. I want you to pray about it. I know that for most of you, this is the first time you've heard it. I've been working on it for months, so what seems like a real clear path for me may not seem that way for you. I want you to think about it. I am convinced that the Holy Spirit is leading us in this direction, and I need you to spend some time in prayer to see if He doesn't tell you the same thing. And I want to invite you to come back tonight. After church tonight, we have a scheduled business meeting where we're going to talk about this and give an opportunity for you to ask questions, and I'll field questions, or if you have ideas, it'll be a chance for us to discuss. We're not intending to make any decisions tonight. This isn't being proposed as a motion. It's just open for discussion. So that's your chance. Go home and think about it this afternoon. Spend some time praying about it. Come up with ideas. Come up with questions. And come back tonight and let's talk about it. If you're visiting with us, meaning you're not part of this church already, you're not a member here, but for some reason, some odd reason, you showed up on this day of all days, I want you to think about and consider that maybe this is what God's calling you here for. That maybe you see God doing something here and you're like, yeah, I want to be a part of that. I want to walk this path with these people. And let's walk that journey together. Because here's the thing, when we look at the story from the Old Testament, we look at Joshua, who did everything right except for one. He succeeded in faithfulness in everything, the way the story tells us, except in one thing. And his children walked away from the God that he had not called them. The next generation walked away from the God that had brought them to this land and had saved them. And it started the tumultuous time of the Judges. And I'll be honest, I think we want better. We can do better for our kids for the next generation of Pelahatchie. So I think we walk this path together to be a catalyst for change in our community and for the growth of the kingdom of God here in this area. And I want to challenge you to think about it, pray about it. Let's pray together. Father, I want to thank you for the lesson we can learn from Joshua. Of all the things he did really well, this mistake just stands out as a glaring one. And we're heartbroken for that. We're sorry for that. We're sorry for what that did to people. But I'm thankful that we can see it and that we can learn from it. And I ask that you would bless the conversations that are now starting among our family, that will happen after church, that will happen at lunch today, that will happen at business meeting tonight. That as this path unfolds in front of us, that you would be just extremely clear of the direction of the steps for us to take, and that you would join us together as a family to walk it together. Ask these things in the name of Jesus. Amen. Listen, we're going to sing hymn number 318 and give you a chance to respond to the Lord. This may be the start of your prayer process, or it may mean that, yeah, I want to be a part of this, and you want to come and make some kind of decision for the Lord, some kind of decision about being a part of this church. And that's what this time is for. So I'm going to ask that you would stand, and let's respond to God as he leads us.